Welcome everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Rainer and this is Rainier Books, and you see me in Sweden at home in Farsta, just outside Stockholm. The weather is kind of chilly today. The whole summer has been like that, and actually I'm not very unhappy about it, because when I see temperatures in the United Kingdom today, or yesterday at least, in London and other places, in Germany, in a lot of respects, they're way over 30 degrees. Madrid has had 45, 46 degrees already, and we have a summer that is consistently between 18 and 25 degrees, more to the 20 degrees, no Fahrenheit today, but only Celsius. But now let me speak about the single review that I want to make for you today, or that I want to do today on this channel. Single reviews are not that successful. We had that discussion a couple of days ago. I made a video about that. But I do one anyway, because I think that this author deserves more attention. So, let me speak about Ken Bruen and his novels, and particularly his novel Galway Girl. Galway Girl by Ken Bruen. Ken Bruen was born in 1951 in Galway, in Ireland. He studied metaphysics. He made his PhD, but then he worked as an English teacher for almost 25 years. He worked in Japan, in Southeast Asia, in South America, in Africa. So he worked for 25 years as a teacher, and the time in South America is particularly interesting because there were 4 months that he spent in prison at that time, because he got in a bar fight in, I think, Rio de Janeiro, and was sentenced to a time in prison. And this time must have been very horrible for him. He was abused, he was tortured, and he came back with a lot of issues with the PTSD, apparently, to Europe. And he decided that writing, or he said in interviews later, that writing was a way for him to get rid of the anger and the rage, the enormous anger and the enormous rage that he felt. And his writing sort of mirrors that in a way. I'll come to that in a moment when I speak about Galway Girl. Ken Bruen has written a lot of thrillers. He has written a series of 7 novels about Detective Sergeant Tom Brant and Chief Inspector James Roberts, and these books play in Southeast London. And many people believed at the time that it was in Brixton, which is a part of London, which is a very famous part of London, actually. Some people even believe that he was a black British author. He has made a joke about that when he had a reading in Brixton once, and he came into that room. There were a lot of people of the black community in Brixton, and they believed that he was a black... Somebody, they told him that we believed you were a black guy. He wasn't. He was an Irish guy, and not many people knew that at the time. So he made these books about Brixton because he lived there. Then he made 4 novels in 2006. His first one came out together with an American crime novelist and also graphic novel author Jason Starr, with 2 characters, Max Fisher and Angela Petrakos. And then his main project became Jack Taylor. And Jack Taylor is a private eye, a private detective in Galway in Ireland, in the hometown of Ken Bruen, because Ken Bruen, after years in England, after years in London and Brixton, returned to Ireland and stayed there until his death, unfortunately, in March 2025, just a couple of months ago, at the age of 74. I was in Ireland, and I had seen some Jack Taylor films on television. I think there are 6 or 7 films out of the 18 novels that Ken Bruen has written about Jack Taylor. This is book number 15, Galway Girl. Why do you buy book number 15 in a series, and why do you start reading a series with number 15? Well, the reason, obviously, for me, was accessibility. This was not so expensive. I bought this at Chapters bookstore in Dublin for €9, which is about $10. And brought it home with me, and I wanted to test the author Ken Bruen. And I have to say that, speaking about Taylor, in this book Jack Taylor has already come far on his way as a literary figure. In this novel Galway Girl, Jack Taylor is confronted by a very young, pretty young, vengeful woman who manipulates two men and another woman to commit horrible crimes together with her. And she wants to take revenge on Jack Taylor because Taylor has supposedly killed her female friend and lover. The body count of this novel, Galway Girl, is immense. And I actually I have not counted the bodies, but there are a lot of bodies in this book. Bruen, I've read a lot of thrillers and crime novels, as you know, and before I became a more literary fiction kind of reader, I was a crime novel reader exclusively. So I read many authors, both American, British, and Swedish. And the Swedes can be really, really bloodthirsty. That's absolutely true. If you have read Henning Mankell, for example, who is still for me the master of modern Swedish crime fiction, then you know that Sweden is a very dangerous place to go to, and the city of Ystad, oh my god. But Bruen took this to another level, to a different kind of level. His novels are so noir, so dark, in the darkest possible way almost. His language is very, very sparse, and he sort of has a unique way, absolutely unique way, to blend descriptions and dialogue so that they become almost organic. And I love to read this because it was so different and it was so unique, and it also fitted. So this becomes more like, is it oral? I thought when I was reading that, is that more an oral kind of way of narrating, or is it lyrical? The first guard was killed on a Friday. The new Garda Superintendent Mary Wilson, who was more than a little sick of the Supreme's jokes, declared to the assembled guards, "This is horrendous." Owen Daglish, a long-serving, not to mention long-suffering sergeant, muttered, "Not much escapes the Bold Mary." Sheridan, alone to the beleaguered Galway station, gave him a look, said, "Watch your mouth, Sonny." Sonny. Owen had a good 10 years plus 50 pounds on the American. American is used loosely, as Sheridan gave the impression of being a Quantico guy by other elements, such as his fucked up accent and Irish cynicism, pointed to a more likely Irish heritage, but he was nevertheless, as he liked to cut it, a very influential swinging dick. You have already heard a couple of words that other people won't use in their daily language, pardon my French. So this contains very much foul language. Ken Bruen's novel, the word starting with an F and ending with a K is used numerous times here. But it really fits to the surroundings. It fits to the atmosphere that Ken Bruen is transporting in Galway Girl. It's a dark picture of Ireland, a dark picture of Galway, dark picture of humanity, dark picture of Jack Taylor, who is a man he was a Garda in novel 1. In the first novel of the series, he was sort of kicked out by the Garda. Garda is the Irish police, actually. So police in English is Garda in Irish. And he was a member of the Garda, and he was fired due to alcohol problems. The prose is very, very sparse, as I said, with lots of references to music, to films, to literature as well, and also to events that take place at the time when Bruen wants the book to be set. And I like that. And as you know, there are many authors in crime fiction who use music as a vehicle to connect, to describe their characters, but also to connect with the audience. Michael Connelly and Harry Bosch. Harry Bosch always listens to jazz music, and if you sort of listen to the Bosch soundtrack, it's very, very impressive. Alan Banks, the detective chief inspector for Peter Robinson, is listening to a lot of music. And also John Rebus, the policeman that Ian Rankin is using in his Scottish crime novels set in Edinburgh, is using a lot of music. But Bruen's strength is really this kind of, I have to show you how the pages look like sometimes to maybe get a little grip. Sometimes even the pages are very sparsely printed, you know. You have this switching between dialogue and descriptions. And the dialogue leads to a sentence that somebody's going to say. And everything is so organic and it works out so well. So that I think that Bruen creates with his very special kind of writing and prose a feeling that his language becomes musical. Now, when you go to Galway, or to maybe to Galway most of all Irish cities that I visited during my holidays, the pubs are full of tourists, and what do they want to have? They want to have a Guinness or another Irish beer, and they want to listen to traditional Irish music. When I listen now to Irish music, when I was in Ireland, in the pubs, I realized that Irish music has so much influenced American music, so incredibly much. When you listen to country music, it has its roots in Irish music, definitely, to 60-70% probably. Yeah. The action, the things that happen in this novel, I said body count is immensely high. Gardas get killed, policemen get killed, a nun gets killed. I don't want to spoil everything for you, and everything is really brutal. This Galway girl, this woman, she calls herself Jericho, on her way to kill Jack Taylor. She kills a lot of people. But contrary to almost all the other authors that I have read so far in crime fiction, Bruen is just saying that something has happened. He's not describing the actual event of the killing in a detailed way. So you might find a sentence like, and then Jericho, the name of the girl, the Galway girl, Jericho shot the barman in the face and left. And then she's gone. And you don't get a scene where policemen are investigating the scene and trying to find evidence, or Jericho on the run. No, she just shot the guy in the face and left. This is kind of brutal, and you have to really be able to cope with that, because I think if you are a gentle soul, I am a gentle soul actually, I think, but if you're a very gentle soul and very sort of sensitive to these kind of events, which I could understand perfectly well, then you have to think about, and also the language, you have to think about if Bruen is the right author. She shot him in the face, that's what he says. Characters are very often over the top as well, and the world in the little town of Galway, I mean, this has kind of 100,000 people, maybe a little bit more, is teetering between the absurd and the tragic all the time. So, if you love authentic crime fiction where everything has to be super logical and everything has to be explainable, then Ken Bruen might not be the right kind of author for you. But if you sort of can understand that exaggeration, this atmosphere of almost comic. In some scenes, I was reminded of comics. And then I thought, okay, Bruen has worked with this American author named Jason Starr, who actually is a very successful graphic novel and comic author, who even did Marvel comics. So I thought maybe there's an influence on Bruen's writing, that he sort of went with his literary descriptions into the comics scene more, and leaving the very often procedural, factual-based literature of crime fiction of our days. So that might be an influence, and it might be the case in Bruen. But I wasn't disturbed by this. I really loved Galway Girl. This is almost pulp fiction. This is almost comic or graphic novel. No one writes or wrote crime novels quite like Ken Bruen. Also, Ken Bruen is one of the few really famous, internationally famous Irish crime novelists and authors. So if you are interested in Irish crime fiction, if you want to read something different, then try to read one of the 18 novels by Ken Bruen about Jack Taylor. Galway Girl is number 15. You can start with the first one called The Guards in, I think, 2004 or 2005. It was an experience, and I really liked that book. Thanks very much for watching. I see you soon in another one. Bye-bye.